A member of NASA's team is set to report later this year on what we do and do not know about the evidence for UAPs. Joshua Semeter told BU Today that whistleblower David Grusch, quote, must be treated as a credible witness, as with the military aviators who have also come forward with eyewitness accounts of anomalous objects. But without data or material evidence, we are at an impasse on evaluating these claims.
Semeter also said, I do not know David Grusch, but I am well aware of the story. It would be inappropriate for me to speculate on his motives, but one can state objectively that his claims are 2 steps removed from being earth-shattering. Not only has he not shared any verifiable evidence, photographs, artifacts, or any other manner of data, but he also has not personally seen or touched any of these objects he references. In the long history of claims of extraterrestrial visitors, it is the level of specificity that always seems to be missing, according to BU Today. So I don't know how I feel about this. Sounds like Grusch was a whistleblower, and that reporting from Grusch was followed up with reporting from Michael Schellenberger, who got some folks who are close to the matter, members of the military and intelligence community, to corroborate this idea that there are a dozen or more non-human spacecraft, potentially with pilots. I don't think people would risk their security clearance by saying, here's some photos of evidence of this. It would probably be very easy to trace who turned that over. If the government's not willing to do it, all we can rely on really is this story being corroborated, and it sounds to me like it was, but I'm on the side of wanting to believe the aliens have been here. But Amber, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that he's kind of trying to put out a massive cope here. The comment particularly about Grusch not having seen or felt the objects, therefore he doesn't know if they're real, kind of struck me as a bit odd. I haven't seen or touched Nikki Haley, but I still know that she exists. So that one just doesn't do it for me. And especially considering that Michael Schellenberger reporting where he did talk to those individuals who claim that the government has about a dozen non-human crafts in its possession, and that potentially they recovered non-human pilots from those crafts. Those individuals may not have seen them firsthand, but if they have access to the intelligence that talks about it, then that's good enough for me.
Yeah, it's good enough for me as well. I think not everyone is ready to accept that our planet's been visited by some kind of beings from beyond Earth. Maybe even beyond our galaxy. I think that's uncomfortable information for a lot of people to process. And the initial response would be something defensive, like, well, I'll believe it when I see it. The people who would be familiar with the matter have corroborated that it's the case. It's been frequent throughout, recent history that former members of the intelligence and military community have come out and shared information about this, some tidbits of data where possible. And so it's not surprising to me that now finally we're getting to the place where members of the military and intelligence community are willing to talk about this with reporters, because I think it's of public interest to know if aliens have been here. And so it just seems to me that there will always be some folks who are afraid of aliens and therefore want to deny that they could be here. And that's fine. You can just warm up to it, and whenever you're ready, accept it. But I think just waiting till we get concrete evidence from the government is more so coming from a place of fear than coming from a place of not believing something that's being reported and corroborated. If this were, it's a topic of lesser galactic importance, perhaps they wouldn't say that when there are so many folks corroborating a story.
Yeah, I want to count myself as the incredibly based on this issue, because I'm both scared of the aliens but also believe that they're real. But I do feel like this is kind of a soft launch, right? It seems like they're slowly giving little tidbits of information a little bit at a time. And I think it's probably to prevent the type of panic that we might see from what I think people we've interviewed on this program before have referred to as a deontological shock or an ontological shock. The idea of the government holding a press conference and saying, aliens are real, they've been here, we have their ships, we've touched them, they're in our possession, that would freak a lot of people out, and it would probably lead to a bunch of people buying up all the milk, eggs, and toilet paper at the grocery store. If COVID were any indication, just kidding, things would be a lot worse than that. So I understand, sort of the motivation behind trying to give piecemeal information. But I also think that the American people have a right in a democratic republic to know what kind of information their military and their government agencies are hiding from them when it directly concerns their well-being, and they should be able to make the decision on how they respond to this alien nightmare.
I think you're right, and I'm a big fan of the soft launch. I'm a huge fan. Not everybody's always ready for a hard launch. There needs to be some time to process that this is a new reality and one that is different from your expectations, maybe. If they just came out and said, here's all the pictures of the spacecraft we've got, we've replicated a lot of the technology, we're at a point where we're competing with Russia and China about the replication of this technology, which is something that Michael Schellenberger said to us in our interview with him here on Rising. But that would be a lot of information for the public to process, especially the idea that there could have been non-human pilots. And so soft launching the aliens, I think, always has to be the method, because I think back to that War of the Worlds radio stream and what that did to folks when they thought that the fictional tale being told over the radio, the book being read, was actually news reporting about aliens coming to Earth. I mean, folks descended into chaos, and I think that's what they want to avoid, because I think many people have been taught to be afraid of things that they don't understand instead of curious, and a consequence of that is fear of aliens. And so it would, I think, make sense for these military and intelligence officials to actually not be whistleblowers or not people who are leaking information, but people who are part of a very well calculated effort to soft launch the aliens. I'm all for it.
Restaurants do soft launches all the time, and it's to work out kinks in the wait staff and, in the kitchen and make sure that everything is running smoothly. So I understand definitely the motivation here. And I do think that people are probably more apt to accept the idea of extraterrestrial life if they're given bits of information at a time. Just coming out and showing a picture of one of the grays is probably going to lead to a lot of people laughing about it or not taking it seriously because of how absurd it really sounds. But if over a couple of decades or over the course of 5 years or so, you get the conversation started, right? You get the buzz about the aliens. People start to talk about it in a way that is more serious. They start to almost have it in their subconscious that these things are real. When the time finally comes to see the pictures and the evidence, there will already be sort of an innate acceptance of what's happening.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. And the next step will be, we've got to get together. We've got to elect a human ambassador to the aliens. I hope I can count on everybody's support. I think that's going to be the best part of this. But I also do think we have such a vast population of conspiratorial folks. And I think that's just a result of, the U.S. government not always being open about information like this. And so I think there's going to be a whole host of conspiracies when we get to the point where the government is releasing evidence, because that distrust has been sown over decades, if not centuries, in the United States, where there's just been a disconnect between the American public and who has access to information like this. And so I think that really needs to change. And I really appreciate Avi Loeb's perspective that this should never be a competition among global powers like Russia, China, and the United States. This is a matter of interest for humanity. It's not something that respects national borders. These are potentially beings coming or life coming from other planets within our galaxy or beyond our galaxy. And I think for governments to work together on this, we're going to get a lot of folks who hate the notion of any kind of global cooperation and the notion of globalism. They're going to say, well, is this just a conspiracy theory so we can have some kind of global decision-making order or government? And I think getting ahead of that is going to be very difficult, because this is something that is going to require international cooperation.
That wraps it up for us today, and we will be back with you all next week. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Jessica, it was great to see you again. We'll be back next Friday.
if I don't get beamed up.